The Xylosian patrol vessel comes stellar gaze, hung like a silent predator in the vacuum, its sensors greedily devouring data from the vibrant, tempestuous world below. Commander HFY-LO-27, a being of crystalline logic and synchronized neural pathways, found himself staring at the primary diagnostic screen with an emotion perilously close to confusion. For cycles, their mission had been routine: observe, categorize, predict. But humanity, the dominant species of this, SOL-3, was proving an anomaly beyond anything in their vast galactic database. His species, the Xylos, existed in perfect synchronicity. Every member of the fleet, every worker on their homeworld, entered a collective torpor at precise, calculated intervals, their biorhythms a galactic constant. It was efficient. It was logical. It was, quite simply, the only way to function. Then came the human data. A jumble of irregular, sporadic, often wildly inappropriate rest patterns. One moment, a human, soldier, was caught on thermal imaging, rifle held loosely, head slumped against a wall in what appeared to be a combat zone. A moment later, another, civilian, was sprawled across a multi-section seating apparatus, a couch, mid-sentence in a data stream, a half-eaten nutrient bar clutched in their hand. HFY-LO-27 zoomed in. A, construction worker, defying gravity and common sense, snored gently, suspended precariously in a safety harness high above a nascent structure. A, student, face down on a data slate, seemingly asleep during a live broadcast. Then, the truly baffling. During what humans termed a crisis event, a medical professional was observed taking a 3-minute power nap, leaning against a smoking debris pile, only to jolt awake, eyes wide, before plunging back into the chaos. The Xylos had no equivalent. Ensign VELLA-9, whose optical sensors rotated in a silent whir of concern, chirped, "Commander, the subject world's dominant life form exhibits no discernible sleep cycle synchronization. Their rest periods are random, often incomplete. We detect significant neural activity during these states indicating stress." XYLO-27 processed the input. Stress, but also immediate recovery. The humans would wake, often instantly, and resume whatever strenuous, often dangerous activity they had been engaged in. No pre-programmed awakening protocols. No gradual system reboot. Just snap, alert, functional, driven. It defied every known biological constant in their archives. He adjusted his mandibles, a rare gesture of unease. VELLA-9, cross-reference all known broken species protocols. Then, cross-reference all known unstoppable species protocols. He paused, his gaze fixed on the swirling blues and greens of Sol-3, where life pulsed with an untamed, baffling rhythm. We are observing a species that either fundamentally misunderstands the concept of rest, or has transcended its limitations entirely. This is not mere observation. This is the first contact with a fundamental paradox. The sensor array screamed, a cacophony of distress signals emanating from a human deep space mining outpost, light years from their home world. The Xylosian stellar gaze shifted its surveillance, honing in on a single, isolated anomaly amidst the collapsing infrastructure of a deep rock tunnel. This wasn't just about random rest patterns anymore. This was about survival in an environment where even the Xylos' superior resilience protocols predicted imminent, unavoidable shutdown. Jax, a human miner, was pinned beneath a twisted beam of durasteel and fractured plasteel, his suit's integrity failing, the air thick with pulverized rock and the metallic tang of ozone. His comms were dead, his helmet cracked, and the crushing weight on his legs had long since stolen any feeling. Commander XYLO-27 watched the readings on his primary diagnostic screen. Jax's biomonitors flickered erratically, showing dangerous oxygen deprivation, rising CO2, and a fatigue index that, by all Xylosian standards, should have rendered him comatose hours ago. Survival projections plummeted with every passing cycle. Ensign VELLA-9's optical sensors rotated, transmitting a query. "Commander, Subject 723 Gamma's vitals indicate extreme systemic failure imminent. Yet, his neural patterns are stabilizing. He is not panicking. He is doing something we do not categorize. XYLO27 zoomed the display. Jax, in a space barely larger than himself, wedged impossibly tight against the curving wall of the tunnel, had somehow managed to fold. His head was slumped, chin almost touching his chest, one arm uselessly draped over a jagged piece of debris. His eyes were closed. His breathing, ragged and desperate seconds before, deepened marginally, settling into a rhythm too slow for wakefulness, yet too shallow for proper torpor. Impossible, XYLO27 articulated, the word feeling alien in his own vocalizer. There are no safe parameters for this. No scheduled intervals. No protective protocols. This is a critical system failure, or a biological impossibility. It wasn't deep sleep, not as the Xylos knew it, more like a primal flicker, a forced dimming of consciousness. A defiant refusal to break, even when every fiber of his being screamed for it. For what felt like an eternity to the observing Xylos, but was barely a human half-hour, Jax rested. His body conserving, his mind retreating to some inner fortress, ignoring the grinding metal groans of the collapsing tunnel and the failing life support of his shattered suit. He was, in that moment, merely existing, taking what he could, demanding nothing more. Then, with the suddenness of a predator striking, his eyes snapped open. No grogginess. No sluggishness. Just an instant, laser-focused awareness. He tested the Durasteel beam again, found a fraction of a millimeter of give, a new angle of attack, and began to claw at the debris with his free hand, his breath a desperate rasp, his resolve as solid as the rock around him. The Xylosian crew exchanged silent, bewildered data packets. This human hadn't taken a nap. He had weaponized rest. He had bent the very concept of biological necessity to his will, using it not for true recuperation, but for raw, defiant survival. Commander XYLO27's internal processors failed to reconcile the data. How can a species function with such chaotic resilience? He murmured, his optical sensors fixed on the small, struggling human. Are they malfunctioning units, perpetually on the brink of collapse, or simply beyond broken? His final unsettling thought resonated through the ship. They adapted to everything, even to the absence of peace. And that made them utterly unpredictable. The stellar gaze, usually a sanctuary of calculated precision, now hummed with a low, disquieting frequency. Commander XYLO27 had authorized an unprecedented deep neural probe tapping directly into the active dream state of a random human subject on SOL-3. Their sensors, calibrated for elegant, structured data, were suddenly overwhelmed, drowning in a torrent of chaotic, illogical, utterly human nonsense. The main view screen, typically displaying sterile topographical maps or intricate bio-readouts, exploded into a kaleidoscope of jarring images. One moment, a human, inexplicably wearing only swim shorts and a chef's hat, was wrestling a talking badger through a shopping mall filled with sentient teacups. The next, the scene shifted, jarringly, to the subject attempting to fly a bicycle through the vacuum of space, only to realize they'd forgotten their socks. Then came a sudden, bone-chilling fear as an unseen entity pursued them through an endless, labyrinthine hallway, only for the terror to morph into bewildering joy as they discovered they could breathe underwater in a forest of glowing mushrooms. Ensign Velenine's optical sensors spun in agitation, her data readouts flashing a cascade of warning messages. Commander, the neural data stream is incoherent. Our pattern recognition algorithms are failing. Emotional markers are fluctuating wildly, from elation to profound sorrow, from primal fear to unexplainable amusement, all within picocycles. There is no logical sequence. No predictive model holds. XYLO27 felt a strange, cold sensation, akin to the human emotion of vertigo. His own consciousness, built on crystalline order, struggled to reconcile the sheer, unadulterated chaos pouring into their ship. His species entered a collective torpor, a systematic defragmentation of sensory input, a quiet processing of logic. Humans, it seemed, used their sleep as a personal, internal maelstrom of absurdity. He watched as the dreamer, subject to designation Miller D., suddenly found himself on a stage, teeth falling out, attempting to give a speech in a language he didn't understand, while the audience, comprised entirely of his elementary school teachers, pelted him with raw fish. The accompanying neural signature registered acute embarrassment and a desperate urge to flee, yet the dreamer remained, trapped in the bizarre tableau. "Observe the persistence," XYLO27 commanded, his vocalizer barely a whisper. Even within this dreamscape, there is an underlying resilience. The subject experiences profound distress, yet his core being does not shatter. It merely shifts, adapts to a new, equally nonsensical reality. The scene flickered again. Miller, D, now a giant, was gently cradling a miniature son, tears streaming down his face as he explained quantum physics to a confused-looking house cat. The sheer illogical creativity was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Vela 9 chirped again, her voice laced with an unprecedented note of alarm. "Commander, our psychological profiles predicted profound mental instability from such continuous unstructured neural activity, yet Miller, D, will awaken in approximately 3.7 cycles, perform his daily tasks with an acceptable level of competence, and likely recall none of this internal cacophony. How can a species endure such a nightly symphony of absolute nonsense and remain functional?" XYLO27's primary processor whirred, attempting to find a logical anchor in the storm. "It suggests a mental fortitude beyond our comprehension, Ensign. If their minds can process such a deluge of internal, self-generated irrationality and wake to face reality, then their capacity for external stress, it must be boundless. This isn't a flaw. This is a forge. They're not broken. They're just terrifyingly robust." The analytical matrix, usually a bastion of cool, calculating efficiency, blared a continuous alarm. Commander XYLO27 watched in mounting bewilderment as the system, designed to categorize and predict, choked on the latest human sleep data. After the initial shock of the dreamscape, the Xylotians had attempted to find a state pattern, a hidden logic in the chaos. What they found was only more chaos. "Commander, the predictive models are collapsing," Ensign VELLA9 reported, her optical sensors a frantic blur. "We fed the collective neural dream data of 7,000 human subjects into the quantum processor, searching for commonalities, logical sequences, even recurring emotional arcs. The result is noise, an incomprehensible symphony of non sequiturs." On the main screen, a multi-layered graphical representation of the human unconscious mind, pulsed with erratic, vibrant energy. Colors shifted from angry crimson to serene azure, then to a sickly green, all without any discernible reason. A human might be flying a jet-powered giraffe one moment, then inexplicably performing advanced calculus, while being pursued by a sentient toaster the next. There was no rhyme, no reason, no modest patterns a Xylosian mind could grasp. XYLO27 extended a sensory filament towards the screen, feeling the phantom ripples of the data storm. "Explain the noise, Ensign. What does the system classify it as?" Vela 9's vocalizer emitted a low, uncertain hum. "It classifies it as adaptive neural defragmentation via simulated stress inoculation." In layman's terms, Commander, it appears their minds are actively inventing the most outlandish, terrifying, or absurd scenarios imaginable, then forcing themselves to navigate them, all while in a state of rest. The implication struck XYLO27 with the force of a plasma burst. His species, during their synchronized torpor, processed the day's events, filed them neatly, and prepared for logical next steps. Humans, it seemed, used their sleep to actively train for the illogical, to build mental calluses against the very concept of sense. It's like they're preparing themselves for anything. A junior analyst, XYLA14, piped up, a rare moment of independent thought. If their subconscious can survive being chased by a colossal, angry teacup, then what real-world crisis could possibly faze them? XYLO27 processed this. The previous observations of humans, napping, during crises, waking instantly, adapting, overcoming. It wasn't just physical resilience. It was mental. Their chaotic dream life wasn't a malfunction. It was a feature. It was a crucible where their minds were forged in the fires of absurdity, learning to react, to improvise, to simply endure the unthinkable. They do not sleep to escape the world. HFY finally concluded, his voice a low thrum of realization. They sleep to conquer it. By wrestling with the impossible within their own minds, they emerge ready for any impossibility reality throws at them. This isn't brokenness, Ensign. This is a kind of terrifying, beautiful madness, and it makes them truly frighteningly unpredictable. The stellar gaze plunged into a new kind of data maelstrom, far more unnerving than the chaotic dreamscapes before it. This wasn't the absurd, nonsensical jumble of talking badgers and flying bicycles. This was raw, primal terror, pulled directly from the mind of a human subject designated Harper L., a civilian living a seemingly mundane existence. The main view screen, usually a sterile display contorted into a swirling vortex of deep, suffocating shadow. An unseen presence began to emerge from the periphery, a shape not quite formed, yet utterly menacing. HFY-LO27's internal processors registered a profound drop in ambient neural light, replaced by a searing, explosive burst of what their systems categorized as pure dread. Harper L.'s biomonitors screamed in unison, heart rate spiking, respiration erratic, muscles tensed into a rigid block. The human was utterly, profoundly terrified. Ensign Vela-9's optical sensors locked onto the data. Commander, the subject's fight-or-flight response is fully engaged. Adrenaline surges through the system. Yet, the physical body remains inert, trapped in a sleep state. The subject is experiencing extreme internal duress. HFY-LO27 watched, fascinated and repulsed. The shadow on screen intensified, looming closer. Harper L.'s neural pathways flared, a desperate, silent shriek trapped within the confines of her own mind. There were no absurdities here, no comic relief, only a pure, unadulterated sensation of helplessness. The alien commander had never witnessed such intense, self-generated anguish. His species had no concept of nightmares. Their rest cycles were restorative, not torturous. On the screen, the shadows coalesced, twisting into something vast, ancient, and utterly unknowable. Harper L. tried to move, to run, to scream. The neural impulses were clear, but her dream self remained paralyzed. The sheer, overwhelming feeling of being pursued, of being trapped, of an inevitable, crushing doom, washed over the stellar gaze's sensor systems, leaving a cold, metallic taste in HFY-LO27's primary optical array. This is not logical, HFY-LO27 articulated. The words tight. Why would a biological entity actively fabricate such terror? What evolutionary advantage could be gained from experiencing this level of internal distress, nightly, for some? It defies all principles of self-preservation. Vela-9 chirped, her voice tight with inferred unease. The data suggests these nightmares are a common human experience, Commander. They are not isolated incidents. Some subjects report them several times in a single rotational period. Just as the shadowy entity seemed poised to engulf Harper L., her physical body jolted. A sudden, ragged gasp tore through her lungs. Her eyes snapped open, wide and wild, scanning the mundane surroundings of her sleep chamber, disoriented, breathing hard. The terror lingered, a fading echo in her eyes, before slowly receding. She was awake, functional, alive. HFY-LO27 observed the immediate aftermath. No lingering trauma, no permanent breakdown, just a residual tremor, a quick reorientation. Then she slowly sat up, rubbing her temples. They endure this, HFY-LO27 murmured, a profound realization dawning. They face the darkest corners of their own minds, confront their most primal fears, and wake up, ready to face another day. If their minds can withstand such self-inflicted torment, what external horror could ever truly break them? They are not just robust in the face of reality, they are hardened by the terrors within. The stellar gaze was no longer a vessel of detached observation. It was a ship caught in a storm. Not of space debris, but of raw, unfiltered human emotion. The prolonged, deep neural probes, particularly into the harrowing nightmare states, had begun to infect the Xylosian crew. It wasn't physical contact, but a subtle, insidious resonance, amplified by their highly sensitive bioempathetic receivers. Ensign Vela-9's optical sensors, usually smooth and precise, flickered erratically. A low, continuous hum emanated from her vocalizer, a sound not of data, but of distress. "Commander," she articulated, her voice surprisingly strained, "the terror resonance levels are exceeding safe parameters. My internal processors are flagging critical system overload in secondary empathetic relays. Crew members on Observation Deck 3 are reporting unquantifiable feelings of dread." Commander XYLO-27 felt it too, a chilling whisper against his own core logic, a distant echo of the human fear they had just witnessed. His crystalline carapace, usually a picture of serene composure, felt brittle. The main screen, mercifully, was now displaying a standard star chart, but the ghost of Harper LS' primal scream seemed to linger in the ship's very atmosphere. "Is the data corrupting the crew, Ensign?" XYLO-27 demanded, trying to maintain his unwavering tone. He activated a full-spectrum neural scan of the stellar gaze. The results were unprecedented. Subsystems designed for objective data processing were showing stress markers. The collective biosignatures of his perfectly synchronized crew were experiencing minute, yet measurable, desynchronization. Their innate, logical calm was being eroded by the sheer, untamed ferocity of human internal suffering. "Not corruption, Commander," VELLA-9 responded, her form twitching as if she were shaking off an unseen burden. "More like sympathetic overload. Their fear, their despair, their absolute illogical resilience to internal torment. It's too much for our systems to process without consequence. We are designed for order. This is chaos given form." XYLO-27 stared at the flickering readouts. His species had never encountered anything like this. To observe a species that not only tolerated such profound self-generated psychological torment but then awoke, functional and ready to face reality, was one thing. To have that torment begin to seep into their own perfectly ordered existence, threatening their very operational stability, was another entirely. This wasn't a battle of wills, it was a battle against an untamed emotional current. "Initiate full disengagement protocols," XYLO-27 commanded, his voice firm, though a cold, calculated apprehension settled deep within him. "Cease all deep neural observation. Prepare for immediate withdrawal to a safe observation distance, beyond current empathetic range." Vela-9's optical sensors stabilized, a wave of relief washing over her bio readouts. "Acknowledged, Commander. Preparing disengagement." As the stellar gaze began its slow, deliberate retreat from the vibrant, chaotic world of SOL-3, XYLO-27 looked back at the distant blue marble. He had sought to understand human sleep, to categorize it as either a flaw or a strength. What he had found was something far more profound and terrifying. Humans didn't just rest. They fought in their sleep, wrestled with their demons, and emerged, not pristine, but hardened. "They are not broken," he murmured, a new, unnerving respect in his tone. "And they are far more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. If their minds can withstand such internal hellfire, what external force could ever truly stop them?" The answer echoed through the ship, unsettling and clear. Almost nothing. The stellar gaze, now orbiting at a calculated distance, had deployed advanced acoustic arrays designed to capture even the faintest whispers from SOL-3. Commander XYLO-27, attempting to regain a semblance of control after the neural probe incident, sought objective, quantifiable data. What he received was a bombardment of utterly indefensible noise. The main audio feed, usually a pristine channel, erupted with a grotesque symphony. It was a chaotic, guttural chorus emanating from various human sleeping quarters. There were deep, resonant rumblings that vibrated the very deck plating, snoring, their databanks reluctantly identified. Then came sharp, sudden inhalations, like an ancient, dying beast gasping for its last breath, snorts. Interspersed were odd clicks, grinding sounds that set the xylosine primary auditory sensors on edge, and even sporadic, unintelligible mutterings. Ensign Velenine's optical sensors pulsed in time with the sonic assault. Commander, the ambient noise levels from Subject Habitation Unit 7 Gamma are approaching critical auditory discomfort for standard xylosine biology. Our internal translators identify terms such as buzzsaw, freight train, and bear fight from human descriptive archives regarding these sounds. HFY LO27 extended a sensory filament, trying to filter the auditory chaos. His species' rest was silent, internal. A calm, collective hush descended upon them. Humans, it seemed, actively produced to sense noise during their most vulnerable state. It was an involuntary betrayal of their own bodies, a physical testament to their untamed biology. How can a species achieve restorative sleep amidst such cacophony? HFY LO27 articulated, the question barely audible over a particularly loud, rattling snore that seemed to shake the very fabric of the ship. The designated partner units are often located in close proximity. This would induce extreme sensory deprivation and prevent proper torpor. The thermal imaging showed two humans, designated married couple, in the same sleep chamber. One, a subject, Miller S., was emitting the majority of the buzzsaw sounds. The other, subject, Miller T., lay beside them, seemingly undisturbed, occasionally adjusting their position with a disgruntled huff before returning to a surprisingly deep state of rest. It was illogical. It was maddening. Analysis indicates that many humans appear to be accustomed to it, Commander VELLA9 offered, a hint of something akin to awe in her modulated tone. Some even report missing the sounds when they are absent, attributing a sense of comfort or familiarity to them. Comfort? Familiarity? To a constant, self-generated sonic assault? HFY LO27 could only process this as a profound, almost masochistic form of adaptation. Not only did they endure chaotic dreams and brief, inappropriate naps, but their very bodies waged a nightly war of noise against themselves and any unfortunate proximity dweller. They are a species of contradictions, HFY LO27 finally concluded, the persistent snorts and grumbles a bizarre backdrop to his thoughts. Even in their most vulnerable, seemingly broken state, their bodies betray an untamed primal energy. They sleep loud, they dream wild, and they awaken, ready. It suggests a deep-seated resilience, a refusal to be anything but entirely, undeniably Skoken-style-dialed, even when their own biology seems to fight against it. The Xylosian acoustic arrays, still reeling from the cacophony of human snoring, now detected a new, bewildering range of physical phenomena. Commander HFY LO27 watched the high-resolution thermal and bioscans, his primary optical array narrowing in disbelief. Humans, it seemed, were not content to merely make noise in their sleep. Their very bodies defied all logical expectations. On the main screen, a human subject, Adams J., lay sprawled on a bed, one arm dangling precariously off the side. A small, glistening pool was forming on the pillow beneath his head. Ensign Velenine's analytical processors whirred, attempting to categorize the substance. Commander, the biochemical analysis indicates unregulated salivary secretions. Human archives refer to this as drool. It serves no known restorative or protective function during torpor. HFY LO27 processed this, an involuntary leakage. Their sophisticated bioshields prevented any such uncontrolled emissions during their own torpor cycles. Yet this human simply leaked, and woke without concern often, their data showed, wiping it away with a shrug before continuing their daily routines. It was an acceptance of physical imperfection, a disregard for neatness, that the Xylosians found profoundly disturbing, yet strangely indicative of something deeper. Then came the twitches. Subject, Chen M., nestled deeply in what humans called a recliner, suddenly gave a violent kick, as if battling an unseen foe. Her fingers spasmed, her head jerked to the side, and a low, guttural sound, not quite a grunt, not quite a whimper, escaped her lips. The Xylosian medical-based diagnostic system immediately flagged it as microconvulsive episodes. These are not seizures, Commander, VELLA9 quickly clarified, her optical sensors focusing. Human medical data categorizes these as hypnic jerks or sleep starts. They are involuntary muscle contractions, often accompanied by a sensation of falling. They are common. The word felt heavy. Humans, in their supposed state of rest, were prone to falling, to involuntary muscle spasms, to leaking fluids. Their bodies were a chaotic orchestra of uncontrolled movements and sounds. It was a complete defiance of the serene, still perfection of Xylosian torpor. It was inefficient, dangerous, and yet they woke. The final insult to Xylosian logic came from the mumbles. Subject, Patel, R., a renowned human astrophysicist, lay on his back, eyes fluttering beneath closed lids. His lips moved, forming faint, incoherent sounds, mere echoes of words, sometimes a full, slurred sentence. "No, the quantum singularity is purple," he garbled, before falling silent again. Incomprehensible vocalizations, Commander, VELLA9 stated, a note of sheer exasperation in her voice, often related to their internal dreamscapes, but entirely nonsensical. No logical communication is occurring. XYLO27 leaned back from the console, the sheer, untamed physical reality of human sleep washing over him. Their bodies twitched, leaked, rumbled, and muttered. Their minds churned with chaos and terror. Yet they not only survived this nightly ordeal, but, by all accounts, thrived. They are a species that cannot even fully control their own biology during rest, XYLO27 concluded, a profound shift occurring in his perception. Their bodies are a tempest, their minds a maelstrom. Yet, they endure. They adapt to their own chaos, their own imperfections. This isn't a weakness, Ensign. This is their ultimate defense. If they can weather the storm within themselves, every single night, then what external force could ever truly break them? They are not just unstoppable, they are, in their very being, a monument to the triumph of raw, untamed existence. The stellar gaze had observed humanity's chaotic sleep, their wild dreams, their noisy slumbers. But now, a new, baffling anomaly presented itself. A human who simply refused to sleep at all. Commander XYLO27 focused his arrays on subject Davids R., a mid-level manager in a SOL3 manufacturing facility, whose biorhythms were an unbroken, agonizing flatline of wakefulness. Davids R. lay motionless in his sleep chamber, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. His biomonitors screamed distress. His neural activity, rather than cycling through the predictable patterns of slumber, was a constant, agitated hum, like an engine running on fumes. He twisted, turned, punched his pillow with a frustrated grunt, then settled back into the same rigid stare. Hours bled into one another. The Xylosians, whose collective torpor was a sacred, non-negotiable right, watched with a growing sense of disquiet. Commander Subject Davids R. has been in this state for 4.7 full rotational periods beyond his predicted onset of sleep. Ensign VELLA9 reported, her optical sensors rotating slowly, almost in disbelief. His stress hormones are spiking, his core temperature is elevated, his higher cognitive functions are degrading, yet he persists in wakefulness. XYLO27 zoomed in on David's RS face. The human's eyes were bloodshot, pupils slightly dilated, lines of fatigue were etched deep around them. He looked, by Xylosian standards, like a system on the verge of catastrophic failure. Yet, he was not comatose. He was not incapacitated. He was merely enduring. Davids R. eventually threw off his covers with a sigh that seemed to vibrate through the ship's sensitive acoustic arrays. He shuffled to a small hydration station, drank deeply, then stood by a window, staring out at the dimly lit urban landscape. No activity, no purpose. Just a prolonged, painful state of being awake. He tried reading a data tablet, but his eyes darted aimlessly across the text. He walked back to his bed, lay down, closed his eyes for a tense moment, then snapped them open again, a silent scream of frustration hanging in the air. "This is self-inflicted torture, Commander," VELLA9 stated, a rare note of alarm entering her modulated voice. Our simulations predict irreversible psychological and physiological damage from such prolonged deprivation. Why does he not simply shut down? HFY had no answer. His species viewed rest as essential, a beautiful, ordered retreat. But for humans, it seemed, even the act of not resting was an ordeal they simply endured. This wasn't chaotic sleep. This was the chaotic absence of sleep. A different kind of battle altogether. The human was fighting his own biology, his own need for restoration, simply because his mind refused to cede control. Observe his persistence, Ensign. HFY finally articulated, a chilling realization settling in. He is broken, yes, but he is not yielding. Even when his own body and mind scream for cessation, he actively resists it. He finds ways to simply pour insane in this agonizing state. This is not a logical form of survival. This is raw, stubborn defiance. And it suggests that even in their most debilitating weakness, humans find a way to simply not quit. The stellar gaze continued its remote observation, having retreated from the direct neural probes. Commander HFY sought solace in the more quantifiable aspects of human biology, yet SOL-3 continued to defy all logic. This time, the anomaly wasn't chaotic sleep or agonizing wakefulness. It was a phenomenon Xylosian science had no category for, a body moving without apparent consciousness. High-resolution scans locked onto subject Jensen A., a human living in a suburban domicile. All biomonitors indicated a deep, almost comatose sleep state. Her neural pathways displayed the characteristic slow-wave patterns of profound rest, yet her body was active. Jensen A. slowly, deliberately, sat up in bed. Her eyes were open, wide and unblinking, yet utterly vacant, devoid of any spark of sentience. Ensign Vela 9's optical sensors rotated, transmitting a flood of bewildered data. Commander, the subject's motor functions are engaged. Locomotion is active, yet her core consciousness remains in deep torpor. This is a critical system bypass. A malfunction of the highest order. HFY watched, utterly transfixed. Jensen A. swung her legs over the side of the bed, her movements fluid but somehow mechanical, detached. She stood, walked slowly out of her sleep chamber, and navigated the dimly lit corridor with an unnerving precision. She turned a corner, carefully avoided a low-lying piece of furniture, and entered another room, which humans called a kitchen. Her hand reached out, located a hydration vessel, filled it at a water dispenser, and brought it to her lips. She drank, a slow, deliberate motion, then returned the vessel to its place, all without a flicker of awareness in those vacant eyes. How? HFY articulated, the question a raw thrum in his vocalizer. How can the physical form operate with such autonomy while the conscious mind is absent? Where is the pilot of this flesh machine? Jensen A. then made her way to an outer door, her fingers deftly manipulating the locking mechanism. The Xylosian cruise system screamed internal alarms. This was a clear threat to subject safety. Yet, as HFY watched, a small, furry human pet, a canine, whimpered at the door. Jensen A. paused, then, with an instinctual grace, unlocked the door, allowed the animal to exit, and then closed and relocked it. She then returned to her bed, lay down, and her breathing settled back into the deep, rhythmic pattern of unbroken sleep. She opened the portal for the symbiotic organism, Commander. Vela 9 stammered, her data streams struggling to compute, without conscious thought, without memory. Her core self was utterly absent. HFY could only process this as another layer of humanity's baffling existence. They could sleep through profound nightmares. They could nap mid-crisis. And now, their very bodies could operate, protect, and navigate while their minds were entirely elsewhere, only to reawaken with no memory of the ghostly journey. They are not just adaptable in wakefulness or sleep. HFY finally concluded, a cold awe settling in his processing core. Their very being is fragmented, yet entirely functional. It is as if their consciousness can simply delegate. This is not brokenness, Ensign. This is a level of unpredictable, layered resilience we cannot comprehend. a species whose body continues to operate even when the ghost has temporarily left the machine. They truly are an enigma wrapped in an unstoppable force. The stellar gaze had observed the chaos of human sleep for cycles, but nothing prepared Commander XYLO-27 for the sheer violence of their awakening. His audio arrays, calibrated for subtle atmospheric shifts and distant neural whispers, were suddenly assaulted by a piercing, repetitive shriek. It was an artificial, metallic sound, designed, it seemed, to inflict maximum sensory discomfort. Subject, Rodriguez M., a human artisan, lay in a deep, chaotic slumber, her biomonitors showing the distinctive brainwave patterns of a REM cycle, a period of intense dream activity. Then, the sound erupted. From a small device on her bedside table, a jarring electronic wail tore through the peaceful quiet of her sleep chamber. Ensign Velonine's optical sensors spun in agitation. "Commander, the subject's central nervous system has registered a sudden, extreme sympathetic response. Heart rate spiking. Adrenaline flood. All systems indicating a threat response. Yet the threat is self-generated." XYLO-27 watched Rodriguez M., her body jerking violently in the bed. Her eyes, still closed, clenched tighter, a low, guttural groan escaping her lips. It was a visceral, involuntary rejection of the sound, a primal scream from her body demanding peace. But the sound persisted, relentless, like a predator refusing to let go. With a sudden, almost desperate movement, Rodriguez M. slapped blindly at the bedside table. Her hand fumbled, missed, then connected, silencing the cacophony. For a brief, blissful moment, there was silence. Her breathing, ragged and fast, began to slow. Her muscles relaxed. The Xylosian crew recorded this as a reprieve. But then, the shark sound returned, a new, equally aggressive burst of electronic noise indicating the human snooze function had been activated. Rodriguez M. groaned again, this time with a note of resigned frustration. Her eyes remained shut, but her body tensed, preparing for another assault. The Xylosians registered a peculiar mental conflict, the body craving rest, the mind acknowledging an external demand. It was a self-imposed tyranny. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of all humanity's morning struggles, her eyes snapped open, not gently, not gradually, crejete, wide, red-rimmed but instantly alert. She pushed herself upright, running a hand through her tangled hair. There was no lingering grogginess, no extended period of disorientation. Just a rapid re-entry into functionality. She stood, shuffled towards her nutrient intake station, and began her day. They actively subject themselves to this. Alarm. Commander. VELLA-9 observed, her voice barely a whisper. They know it will inflict distress, yet they deploy it. And then, they immediately become functional. It is a daily, self-inflicted shock to the system. XYLO-27 processed the data, a cold awe settling in his core. It is not merely an awakening, NC. It is a trial by fire, a daily test of their ability to endure sudden, artificial assault and immediately pivot to full operational capacity. They weaponize their own wakefulness. They are not broken by it. They are forged by it. Every single human, every single morning, proves they are willing to fight just to get out of bed. And that, he concluded, a metallic click echoing in the silent bridge, that is truly terrifying. The last violent shriek of the alarm finally died, leaving an unnatural quiet in its wake. Subject Rodriguez M., the human artisan, lay still for a moment, her chest heaving slightly, the residue of her forced awakening still clinging to her. Her eyes, open now, scanned her sleep chamber, devoid of the wild fear that had gripped her just moments before in the depths of her dreamscape. Commander XYLO-27 watched her biomonitors return to a semblance of normal, the spikes of adrenaline, the frantic heart rate, all rapidly receding. It was as if the internal maelstrom of the night had never occurred. Rodriguez M. swung her legs over the side of the bed, her movements fluid, if a little stiff. She padded to a small station, engaged a primitive heating device, and soon, the pungent aroma of opafi filled the air, detectable even by the stellar gaze, Skelda relivering Stiholm's long-range atmospheric sniffers. She poured the dark liquid into a vessel, her hands steady, her expression neutral. There was no lingering tremor, no hesitation. She was, to all observable metrics, fully functional. Ensign Vela-9's optical sensors rotated towards XYLO-27. Commander, the subject's memory recall protocols show no active engagement with the preceding dream state. The intense fear, the absurd scenarios, the physical discomfort, they are simply not being accessed. It is as if they were erased. XYLO-27 found himself fascinated by this profound amnesia. His species meticulously catalogued every sensory input, every logical process, even during torpor. Humans, it seemed, willingly discarded vast swaths of their nightly experience. They faced internal horrors, fought talking badgers, endured self-inflicted alarms, and then, with the first light of a new day, they simply forgot. Or, more accurately, chose not to remember. Rodriguez M. took a sip of her coffee, grimaced slightly, then checked her data slate for incoming communications. A human-designated co-worker had sent a message detailing a minor production issue. Rodriguez M. read it, a faint frown creasing her brow, and immediately began formulating a response. Her mind, moments ago battling phantoms and noise, was now sharply focused on mundane, practical problem-solving. They do not dwell, Ensign XYLO-27 articulated, a profound, unsettling truth settling in his crystalline core. They shed the madness, they discard the chaos. Every cycle, they plunge into a personal hell or an absurd playground, and every morning, they resurface, wiping the slate clean. They do not carry the burdens of their rest into their waking hours. This is not brokenness. This is a terrifying, potent form of mental resilience. He watched Rodriguez M. leave her sleep chamber, ready to face the day's challenges, completely unaware of the battles her mind and body had just fought and won. They endure the impossible in their sleep, only to forget it when they wake. And that, XYLO-27 concluded, a cold respect in his voice, that makes them perpetually ready, perpetually unstoppable.